In a small village, under the bright African sun, lived a young man named Reuben. He was full of energy, always dreaming big but never thinking ahead. Every day, Reuben would run around the village, telling everyone about his latest ideas on how he would become rich and famous. One day, he said to his friend Caleb, "I'm going to find a way to make a lot of money. I don't want to work like the other people in the village. I want to become rich now." Caleb, who was strong and sensible, shook his head. "Reuben, not everything can be rushed. You must be careful, my friend." But Reuben didn't listen. He wanted to find an easy way to get what he wanted. That very evening, as the sun began to set, a tall, old man arrived in the village. His name was the Old Traveler. He had a long grey beard, and his clothes were dusty from traveling. His eyes twinkled with knowledge, and he spoke in a voice full of mystery. The villagers gathered around, curious about the Old Traveler and his stories. Reuben, eager to hear something exciting, pushed his way to the front. "Who are you?" Reuben asked. The Old Traveler looked at him and smiled. "I am a man who knows many secrets," he replied. "I can show you how to get rich in a way that no one else can." Reuben's eyes widened. "How?" he asked. The Old Traveler leaned closer. "I can sell you something very special, your shadow. For a price." Reuben frowned. "My shadow? Why would I want to sell my shadow?" The Old Traveler's smile grew wider. "If you sell your shadow, you will be free from it. No more darkness, no more fear. You will have everything you desire: money, power, and freedom. All it takes is the simple act of giving it away." Reuben thought for a moment. His shadow was always with him, following him wherever he went. Maybe it was time for a change. He was tired of being like everyone else in the village. He was ready for something bigger. "I'll do it," Reuben said without hesitation. The Old Traveler handed him a small piece of paper. "Sign this, and the deal will be done," he said. Without thinking twice, Reuben signed the paper. The next morning, Reuben woke up excited. He felt lighter, freer, and full of energy. He ran outside, eager to see the gold the Old Traveler had promised him. But when Reuben stepped into the sunlight, something strange happened. He looked down, and there was no shadow. At first, he thought it was a mistake. Maybe the sun was in the wrong place. But no matter how hard he looked, there was nothing. His shadow was gone. His heart began to race. What happened? He wondered aloud. Reuben rushed to the spot where the Old Traveler had stood the day before, but the man was gone. All that remained was a small leather bag, and inside it were piles of gold coins. At first, Reuben felt powerful with the gold in his hands. He had everything he had ever wanted. He danced around, looking at the coins shining in the sunlight. But as the day went on, he began to feel strange. The first thing he noticed was how much colder it was. Without his shadow, it felt like there was nothing to protect him from the hot sun during the day and the cool winds at night. He shivered, but it wasn't from the cold, it was something deeper. Later that afternoon, Reuben tried to walk through the village, but as he moved through the streets, people looked at him oddly. The children who once played with him ran away, and the elders no longer greeted him with their usual smiles. "Why are they avoiding me?" Reuben asked himself. He looked around, but it was as if he no longer belonged. His friend Caleb noticed the change in him. "Reuben, something is wrong. You've always had your shadow following you, but now, you seem different. What did you do?" Reuben hesitated. "I sold my shadow. The Old Traveler promised me riches. He said I would be free." Caleb shook his head. "Reuben, you didn't think this through. Shadows are a part of us. Without it, you will lose something very important. Your shadow isn't just a part of your body, it's part of your spirit, your soul. You've made a grave mistake." But Reuben didn't believe him. He thought that Caleb was just too old-fashioned. After all, he had the gold, and that was all that mattered, wasn't it? As the days passed, Reuben's excitement began to fade. He had all the gold he wanted, but he couldn't escape the hollow feeling inside. The villagers had stopped talking to him, and he couldn't sleep at night. The darkness felt too thick, too suffocating. Every time he tried to fall asleep, he felt as if something was missing. His feet felt heavy, and every step he took felt unbalanced. Without his shadow, it was as though the world itself was spinning in a way he couldn't understand. Reuben thought back to the warning the old traveler had given him: do not try to get your shadow back, or bad things will happen. But now, all he could think about was his shadow. He missed it. He missed how it was always there, following him, comforting him. He remembered how it used to stretch out beside him in the sunlight, how it danced and played when he ran. It had been his companion for as long as he could remember. One morning, Reuben decided that he needed help. He couldn't go on like this. His friends told him to visit Mama Bisi, the wise market woman, who had knowledge of the world's hidden secrets. Mama Bisi was a strong, round woman who always wore a yellow headwrap and blue clothing. She was known for her wisdom and had helped many people in the village with their problems. Reuben found her sitting under a tree, selling fruits to passers-by. Mama Bisi, Reuben said, his voice shaking, I need your help. I've sold my shadow, and now I feel empty. I don't know what to do. Please, help me. Mama Bisi looked at him kindly but with a sternness in her eyes. You foolish child, she said softly. You cannot sell your shadow and expect to live without consequences. The shadow is part of who you are. It cannot be bought or sold like any other thing. But the old traveler promised me riches. Reuben protested. He said I would be free. Mama Bisi shook her head. No one is free without balance, Reuben. The shadow is your balance. Without it, you will lose yourself. You must find the old traveler and beg him to return it. Reuben felt a spark of hope. Where can I find him? Mama Bisi's eyes turned serious. He is not easy to find. But I know that the path to him is long, and it will be full of challenges. You must be ready. With Caleb by his side and Mama Bisi's advice in his heart, Reuben set off on a journey to find the old traveler. He knew it would be difficult, but he was determined to get his shadow back. The journey took them through dense forests, across fast-flowing rivers, and over steep, rocky mountains. Along the way, they met many people, some kind, some strange, but all with lessons to teach. In the forest, they met the fisherman, a superstitious man who warned them of the dangers of traveling too far. Don't go deeper into the forest, the fisherman said, his voice trembling. There are spirits that live there, and they don't like those who wander too far from the path. But Reuben, feeling desperate, ignored the warning and pressed on. The deeper they traveled, the stranger things became. At night, Reuben could hear whispers in the wind, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. Caleb was becoming more nervous, but Reuben was determined to reach the old traveler. We need to be careful, Caleb said one evening as they sat around the fire. The further we go, the more the world feels strange. I don't like this. But Reuben, driven by his desire to get his shadow back, refused to turn back. We can't stop now, Caleb. We've come too far. The next day, they crossed a dark river, the water murky and deep. Caleb hesitated, but Reuben urged him to keep going. The moment they stepped out of the water, the air became thick, and the trees seemed to close in around them. Reuben felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. Suddenly, they heard a voice from behind them. You should have listened to the fisherman. They turned to see the old traveler standing on a nearby hill. His face was hidden by the shadows of the trees, but his voice was clear. You foolish child, he said, shaking his head. You have come so far, but you still don't understand. The shadow is not something you can just take back. It is part of who you are. You must prove that you have learned the lessons of wisdom, patience, and humility. Reuben stepped forward, trembling but determined. I have learned. I understand now that I was wrong. Please, give me my shadow back. The old traveler studied him for a long time, his eyes glinting with something Reuben couldn't understand. The old traveler stood before Reuben, his ancient eyes watching carefully. The air around them felt heavy, and for a moment, Reuben could hear only the soft rustling of leaves and the beating of his own heart. You say you have learned your lesson, the old traveler said, his voice like the whisper of wind through the trees. But do you truly understand what it means to live with balance? To understand that wealth and power come not from greed, but from respect for the world around you? Reuben swallowed hard, trying to gather his thoughts. I understand now, he said, his voice shaking slightly. I was wrong to think that I could just take something as important as my shadow. I see now that I lost something valuable. Please, give it back to me. I will never be foolish again. The old traveler studied him for a long time, his face unreadable. Then, after what seemed like an eternity, he spoke again. You have made a great journey, Reuben. But to truly prove that you have learned, you must face one final test. Reuben's heart raced. What kind of test? The old traveler stepped closer, and Reuben could feel the weight of his words in the air. You must give something of yourself, something that you cherish deeply. You must show that you are willing to sacrifice something for the sake of wisdom, for the sake of balance. Reuben thought about the gold he had gotten when he sold his shadow. It had been everything he thought he wanted. But now, as he stood before the old traveler, he realized that it wasn't gold or riches that he truly needed, it was something more. I understand, Reuben said quietly. I will give you something precious. He turned to Caleb, who had been silently watching, worried but proud of his friend's change. Reuben took off his necklace, the one that had been passed down to him by his father. It was a simple red coral necklace, but it had always been special to him. I give you this, Reuben said, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside him. I give you what I have always cherished. I offer it as a symbol of my growth and my understanding. The old traveler nodded, accepting the necklace. A wise choice, Reuben. You have learned the lesson of sacrifice, of understanding the value of what you hold dear. For a moment, there was silence. Reuben stood still, waiting for the next step, wondering if he had done enough. Then, with a soft smile, the old traveler raised his hand, and the air shimmered around him. A shadow began to form, stretching slowly at first, then faster, until it stood tall beside Reuben, just as it had before. Reuben gasped, his eyes wide. There, standing beside him, was his shadow, the part of him he had lost, now returned. You have passed the test, Reuben, the old traveler said. Your shadow is now yours again, and so is your wisdom. But remember this, your shadow will always be with you. It is a part of you, just as your choices are. Do not forget what you have learned, for the true riches in life are not gold or power, but the wisdom you carry in your heart. Reuben knelt down, bowing his head in gratitude. Thank you, he whispered, feeling a deep sense of peace settle inside him. Reuben's journey back to the village was much different than when he had left. The weight on his shoulders had lifted, and he felt lighter both in body and spirit. The village, which had seemed distant and cold when he was without his shadow, now felt warm and welcoming again. As he entered the village, the people began to notice him. They saw the change in him, the way he walked with purpose, with a deeper understanding of the world around him. Caleb, Memarbisi, and the other villagers greeted him with smiles. Reuben's heart swelled with gratitude. He had lost so much, but in the end, he had gained something far more precious than gold. He went to Caleb's house and sat with him under the stars. "I've learned so much," Reuben said quietly. "I thought I could buy my way to happiness. But now I know that true happiness comes from within. It comes from understanding the balance of life, from respecting what we have, and from making the right choices." Caleb smiled, proud of his friend. "You've learned well, Reuben. The journey wasn't easy, but it was worth it." As Reuben sat there with Caleb, he felt the weight of his shadow beside him. It wasn't just a shadow, it was a symbol of his growth, his understanding, and the lessons he had learned along the way. The sun would rise again tomorrow, and Reuben would face it with a clear heart and mind. He no longer needed to chase after riches or power. He knew now that he had everything he needed within him. Years passed, and Reuben became known throughout the village as a wise and humble man. He continued to live simply, working hard and helping those around him. He had learned the true value of hard work, of balance, and of living with respect for the world. He shared his story with the children of the village, warning them about the dangers of greed and the importance of understanding the deeper things in life. As he grew older, Reuben's shadow remained with him, a constant reminder of the lessons he had learned. And whenever he walked through the village, people would smile at him, not because of his wealth, but because of the wisdom that shone from him like a light in the darkness. Reuben never forgot the day he sold his shadow. It had been a foolish mistake, but it had led him on a journey that changed his life forever. He had learned that the most important things in life couldn't be bought or sold. They had to be earned, cherished, and respected. And so, Reuben lived out his days, content and wise, knowing that true riches came not from what you had, but from who you were. Moral lesson. The story of Reuben teaches us that true wealth isn't measured by material things, but by the wisdom we gain and the lessons we learn. Greed and shortcuts may seem tempting, but the most valuable things in life, like love, balance, and self-understanding, cannot be bought. Remember, it's not what you have, but who you become that truly defines your success. So, always strive for inner growth, respect the world around you, and never lose sight of the things that truly matter. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more inspiring tales and life lessons, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notification. Leave a comment below with your favorite part of the story, and let us know what you've learned from Reuben's journey.